Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bangkok Bareback. This is a new series I'm going to do called the Bangkok Bareback, where I have little information, cultural literacy courses, or whatever you call this. The Bangkok Bareback. This is what the name of the show is called. This is episode 1, and we're going to refer to episode 1 throughout the series, but I'm going to get into it. The Bangkok Bareback. Very good series. Yeah, what's the whole thing? Episode 1. We're going to say this episode's about due support. So, in the English language, you'll notice there's something very odd about the English language that no other language really has. It's called due support. Now, Cornish has it, and Welsh has did support, but they don't have due support. Therefore, it's fascinating. So when you ask the question, do you drink coffee, or do you open up doors? You put that do there in front, that auxiliary, in the front of the sentence. Haven't you noticed we do that? Haven't you noticed that? That, yes, we do. Other languages have the word do, but they don't put do support in their sentences, in the front of their questions. That meaningless do. So, and it's like, you have to, it's like, same thing, should you invest in the stock market or pay off your credit card? The meaningless do, and then you have paralysis analysis. Well, I'll get all into this. We're going to be like a cultural, like, literacy series. The Bangkok Bareback. The Bangkok Bareback. Anyway, so due support. Fascinating, right? There's theories on how this due support happened. Some people say it was the Bosonic languages, which are the languages before. There's a substrate where the Celtic languages, or the Brittonic languages in particular, were influenced. There's so many different theories on how due support happened in English. And English is it's a fascinating language because it wasn't written down until reflected in the speakers until about the 1400s. So a lot of the speaking changes happened way before it was written down. They tried to write down proper English, and it took until years later, when some of the more Celtic influenced parts of the language started leaking through, and the due support sort of happened in that time period. It's just fascinating, the fact that sort of happened. And so, when it comes to due support, and I do think that because of that culturalness in the English language, we have a lot of problems. It's a very individualistic society, maybe because of the due support. Who knows exactly? Although you could say a group could be doing something instead of an individual, so maybe I'm wrong with that. You'll never say to the group, you never say to the United States, do you take over my country? You say, are you going to take over my country? Put are instead of do, I guess. Do you bomb this place, or are you going to bomb this place? I guess. I don't, like, you know what I mean? Like, we put do in an individualistic concept, not a collectivist concept. I think there's a big issue with dating, because we do do's when we're lazy, and we don't use do's when we're confident and active. Or, I guess people aren't that confident, but when they're exercising or whatever, you know what I mean? They don't improve themselves. So you look at, like, men, for instance, dating advice when it comes to men. It's interesting because they say, oh, do lifts, bro. Do lifts, bro. And you see women, they're like, oh, you're a princess. This, so just say reject men. Do reject men. Only settle for the best. And, like, the assertion is you're already perfect, so just settle for or try to get the best man. And that's not true. I mean, yes, the younger you are, the more likely you are to attract a man. But you also have to put in some work to be attractive. Some work. Not put on makeup. No, I'm talking like working out and weird stuff like that. Dieting. If you want to stay long term, you want to exercise and diet a little bit more. If you want to do it short term, yes, you will be attractive for that short period of time. But then men will ignore you when you get in your 40s. That's just the way life is. I know that's sad. Your husband shouldn't, but everyone else in life will eventually not be as attractive to you. The economics of women, like, and it's interesting because women, they won't do the sex, or maybe they will with the top men, This is why we're putting do in front of things, because I think I can match it with dating market and do support English language. But let's just talk about this. I know I'm not a dating advice channel or whatever, but it is interesting. So, like, women will do absence, meaning they're not going out with the men that they'll only go out with like the men they truly want, like the top 1%. But then the men who clearly want them as like a wife or long term, women have a longer sex drive than men. Men have a shorter sex drive, like in terms of life. But the thing is, women are only fertile for that short period of time when their sex drive isn't as high. When they get older, their sex drive is super high compared to when they're young. And so what's happening is you have a bunch of women in their 30s now realizing, I'm rustling to find a man. And then what happens is a lot of them turn into single mothers, or they just don't have kids in the first place because they rush to find a man. And then, some of these people are very careerists. I like to call them careerists because they value their career more than their time on the planet. Kind of sad, but that's what they do. Some of them are generally, what they do is generally valuable to society. So I do think that you should value that in some extent. But like saying you're a CEO or corporate manager, like that to me doesn't, I don't know, I'd rather say you're a plumber or a tradesman. That has more value in my head than a corporate manager. Although you are managing, you are accounting basically for the firm and making sure everything sort of runs efficiently. But firms, because of the capital loss theory of corporations, it's not going to run perfectly efficiently. If you're running for big corporation CEO, if you're a small company, I can understand that. But you're a big company, you're barely saving any money as a CEO. You could just quit, and so you'll be easily replaced by somebody else. CEOs are replaceable in our society, extendable, but they make a lot of money because of the amount of the volume of the trade they can do. There's a reason why the board of directors pays them as much money as they do. I always ask socialists this, and why do you riot? And they say, because the big man, the CEOs make all the money. Okay. Why do the CEOs make money? Is it because they have the most amount of stocks, or do you think the shareholders are paying the CEO to make the stock more efficient? It's probably a mix of both, to be honest with you. But does any socialist ever think, why wouldn't the shareholders just keep all the money themselves? Why would they even have a CEO? But again, I think every company needs leadership, and so that is why a CEO exists. Hierarchy is inevitable. And that's what we've gotten from the organic stock market. That people are willing to buy and trade freely, and yet we still create hierarchies. And so socialists disagree with that. We say, we will do this. I'm putting the word do in things because, again, it's episode 1, do support. Got it. So, we will do this. We will rebel. We will be brutal against the hierarchies of society. It's like, you can't get rid of corporatism, though. It's an inevitable part of history. It's progressivism. It goes forward. You can't get rid of it. Every country has resorted to a corporate state. The Italian fascists, they dismantled most of the corporations. They got remade, guess what, in the 2020s. So you can't really, today we're soft. We're not violent fascism, but fascism is just corporatism with violence. We're soft corporatism. We'll write things on a pen, but we won't put you in jail. We'll just say, we're just going to reject your health insurance, although that's the United States in particular. But there's corporations in Europe in particular that are extremely powerful as well. In the European community, European economic bloc. People don't really talk about that. And then, the doctor unions in the UK. Oh, man, that just destroyed the healthcare system in the UK. They nationalized all the doctors in the UK. So it's very hard for a customer to come into a private facility. You have to come into a public one, and then you're on a long waiting list, and then some of the doctors are from other countries. So I don't really know if the doctors union is very high, but the state controls the doctors, I think, more than the doctors control the state. Although the state probably doesn't know how to run healthcare very well, which is probably why this is get out of healthcare. Let the doctors run it, and then let them mostly not interact with the state unless it's for really bad safety reasons, and you should put the state in. But right now, it's more of a safety hazard to have the state in the government healthcare than it out. The UK is clearly suffering from their state healthcare system. There are people going off of ventilators because the state said we can't afford to support you anymore. So therefore, it should not, the state and the doctors at that point should be separate. But here in the United States, we kind of need these corporations to fulfill their promises. They promise, oh, we'll get the surgery done, and they just don't do it. In that case, you do need the state to step in and say, no, you will obligate this surgery for this person. They pay a lot of money to be in your insurance company, and guess what? The insurance companies are slowly doing the things that they need to do. I hope you got the reference. But yes, do support. It's a fascinating thing in our culture. And when the American settlers came over here from the northern, the middle colonies, and the south colonies, the southern colonies spread out to Arizona and Texas, and they were originally from South Carolina, and they spread out. That's to Bermuda. Then they spread out to South Carolina. Then they spread out to Texas and Arizona. So the South really spreads all the way from Arizona. New Mexico is sort of was actually more influenced by the middle colonies. The middle colonies spread out all the way to California. And then the New England colonies, their culture spread out all the way to Washington and Oregon. So they kind of skipped California a little bit. And you'll see the cultures between the three major lingual ethnic groups, between the north, the south, and the middle. Within all groups, like California is very influenced by the middle states of the United States. It's very fascinating that the way they speak sounds more mid-Atlantic than New Englander. In Washington, Oregon, a lot of their cities, guess what? Portland, Oregon, Portland, Maine. Guess who moved to Oregon a long time ago? A bunch of people from Maine. That's why the cities are the same name. Now you understand why there is a big culture, and they did stuff. They did stuff. They went, I will go march out into the West and conquer the land and build it into my own image. And that's what they did. They improved the land. They conquered it. They conquered nature. Some of the people that were living there, although most of the people died of disease before they even really were brutalized, but they went out there and they spread out west. They convinced people not to move to the land, like other ethnic groups besides them, to not move to the land. It was very interesting time in United States history, the age of expansion. But I would argue we need to do something a little more different than what we do now. I'm arguing for an age of optimization and a slight reform on the way we word things in our society. We should get rid of the word democracy, because I am completely opposed to democracy. I'm so much more for meritocracy and small hierarchies competing against each other, and you can easily move into another neighborhood. I'm so much more for free trade than democracy. I hate the word democracy. Anytime someone says, oh, it's for the sake of our democracy, I just what the heck are you talking about? Democracy is the reason why slavery was in the Constitution for so long. Kept voting to keep it. Democracy is bad, although, if you say everyone has a vote, including the slaves, okay, because they didn't allow the slaves to vote, and clearly that would be against their best interest, okay, then I guess but then you have to say, okay, well then you need felons to vote in the United States, or kids to vote. Not everyone votes in the United States, so we're not a true democracy by any means. Not a total democracy. A total democracy, in my opinion, is everyone votes, and the laws are directly influenced by the voters, which I am totally against, by the way, anyway. It's clear to me that different branches, like a Senate and a House, are, I love different chambers. The UK and the US are very stable countries because they don't have this one chamber making laws. It passes the House of Commons, then it goes to the House of Lords, then it goes to the King. It gets signed by the King or the Governor General. So it's clear to me that there's a division of powers between the British systems and other countries in the world. And I'm completely okay with different sectors of the economy. It's pretty much interesting to me that I like the separation of powers, especially with a monarchy like the British have. I think it's very, very important. They did that. They do the monarchy stuff. They do the traditions. They do all that stuff. And so, yeah, this is the great thing about, I don't know how much of history I'm going to go back. But, for instance, I don't know, you look at government systems around the world, and you notice how, Eritrea barely has a constitution. It's barely written down. They have an acting president who basically his word's mouth, and then everybody else just follows him with the slave army. You don't go into the army, you get your family gets into a big cargo container and get trapped in the desert. A big cargo container around you. It's just not a very good system. So you kind of need. I do think the separation of powers is semi-important. However, you need each chamber of the House to represent different things. Like the House of Lords originally was supposed to represent the responsible part of the British government. The problem is now it's influenced by the House of Commons. Now the House of Commons is appointing lords. I disagree with that. The House of Commons should not be appointing lords. There's too much intermingling between the branches. House of Lords is supposed to represent the responsible landowner who cares about the land enough to make responsible law for the land. The monarchy, same thing. The monarchy is the last line of defense when he signs the law. But they rarely veto things. They're not allowed to voice their opinion. Publicly, but they can voice their opinion directly to the Privy Council, to the Prime Minister and the Privy Council in the House of Commons, which is a very important and powerful position. Especially if you're a big landowner, you have to really make sure people are responsible for your land. Here in the United States, the president, while he doesn't own, he's renting the land. Like the White House is owned by the taxpayers. Technically, he's renting everything. He doesn't really have an incentive to improve it for the long term. He's an incentive maybe to improve it for the short term while he's in office. But his successor, let's say he hates his successor, the next president who's coming in, why does he have any reason to improve the White House that much? He's going to be out in 4 years anyway. And so you have no incentive to really improve everything for the long term, which is why I'm okay with monarchy. I think the current monarch of the United Kingdom is not very good. I think he's not a very good king, in my opinion, although I guess he might be. I don't know. I know he speaks Welsh, and I think he was in the Navy or Army, so he might be responsible in that. Maybe he was treated differently. I don't know, because I feel like if you're the monarch's children, you're going to get special privileges in the military, but I guess not. I don't know. But I think the king did serve in the military. I know the prince served in the Air Force. The current Prince of Wales served in the Air Force. So I'm just thinking, monarchy does have that responsibility edge, the long-term responsibility edge, and you know who's in charge. With the president, he's renting from the bureaucrats, and so you don't really know who's in charge. I guess the guy writing the president's speeches, but then you gotta realize who's influencing that guy. So you don't really know, and that's the issue with the United States. I mean, they do claim the president's in charge, but really you get blamed for everything, and you can't solve it with the amount of power you have. Congress controls the budget. I mean, you could probably direct things in the budget executively, if it goes to one department. Let's say it has to be contained within the department that Congress delegates. I think you can move the money around a little bit. I don't know how much power the executive actually has on that. It would be fascinating to figure that out. But, yeah, I just think that I don't like the idea of monarchy that much. I would rather have CEOs control things. And CEOs, well, again, they are incredibly hierarchical. I don't want this one big CEO or dozen CEOs. I want thousands of CEOs in every little gated community, or every single community, not gated community, but every single community has a mini CEO. Not like a HOA, but not an HOA, but something that it still manages it somehow makes trade more efficient. And I don't know how you would do that necessarily, but in my opinion, corporatism should be reduced for pure on capitalism. We really want to. I think we should embrace capitalism even more than we do, because our corporatist model doesn't seem to be working. This whole thing where the corporations are in bed with the government and the government's in bed with the corporations, it doesn't seem to be working. Instead, we should reduce the amount of power that's in the Constitution, or we should really go only the enumerated powers. Although I don't even really like the Constitution. It could probably be scrapped if we really wanted to. I've read it, and I understand that it was important at the time. But now we're at the age of optimization where we don't need it anymore. We don't need to be policing all these countries. It's clear to me the countries are sick of us. I mean, the only reason we can import so much stuff is because of our big military. So, I mean, what am I to say about that? I do benefit from it. But at the same time, wouldn't it be better to trade all that stuff voluntarily than just convince countries to trade with us with our big Federal Reserve notes and our military? The only reason we haven't collapsed is because, first off, we're the world reserve currency, and countries somehow trust us because we don't hyperinflate our currency too much. And secondly, we got the big military to back it up. If we didn't have those two things, I don't think people would do. They would be getting rid of their currency. They would. They probably would. The US dollar would not be outside the borders of the United States. Argentina would not be thinking of adopting the United States currency if it had value outside the United States. But it does. And that's why Argentina wants to adopt it. And I think if they want to, they should go ahead. I do think they should make their own Argentino peso. Like, they still have it. But it's clear to me that the inflation rate is still very high. And I'm hoping that Milei can reduce the inflation. That's the guy who runs Argentina. He's the president of Argentina. It's interesting how different countries, like France, for instance, they do have a prime minister and a president. And I think they have a president of the Senate, we have a president of the Senate too. But they have a Senate assembly or something. And they have a constitutional court, and then a criminal court, and then I believe a civil court. I don't really know exactly how they have 3 Supreme Courts in the French system, which is fascinating. And then they have the president appoints the prime minister, and the prime minister appoints his cabinet. And the president and the prime minister, if they're from different parties, the president has more power, but if they're from the same party, the president has way less power. It's fascinating how the parties work. The parties are actually ingrained in the French system a little more. Not in the Constitution, but like just as a political mechanism they are. And so people do weird things like that, where you just don't even think about the way structures are. What people do, you cannot control. The only thing you can control is the things that impact you directly, and how you would respond to that will end up with you going to jail for not having no self-control or no self-respect, or no self-control, or you can interact with that positively, and hopefully the judge lets you off, or you become a millionaire by just saving a bunch of money every year and putting in the stock market. Like, everything is a long term if you really plan it out. Like, I plan in 50 years time, I plan on putting 10 to 20% in my retirement account. I think I'm still behind by 20% of my retirement, which I do need to really up it, but I don't make enough income just yet to really put a lot in retirement. But like, that's the thing, you have to do things. Pull the trigger, do it. Don't worry about what investments you gotta put in your 401k, just do it. Because the compounding rate is way higher than whatever you're gonna put in there. Even if you have actively managed crappy mutual funds, it's better to have the money in there than to have no money at all in the market, because at least you're compounding, even if you've got the crappiest mutual funds in the world. Now, I don't agree with actively managed mutual funds. Go put yourself in a passive index fund, or what I call an index fund. Go put yourself in an index fund, because why the freak would you buy a sale load, fund, actively managed fund? It makes no sense. So in my opinion, why would you do that? And then not only that, sometimes they sell a dividend fee for any time you collect dividends, or just an active fee every year, and then the tax fee. Like, just pull the trigger. Do it. Pull the trigger. Have you ever seen those searches? Just do it. That's a perfect example, but it should be in the finance. I mean, obviously, if everyone did that, it would probably hyperinflate the stock market, and especially the index fund market. But I'm telling you, if you're one of my listeners, there's not very many of you out there, and so you should just do it. But anyway, this is the first episode of the Bangkok Bareback. I plan on 20 minutes every episode. The Bangkok Bareback. You can always revert back to the due support of the English language. Name of this episode. I talked about some weird topics: dating, history, political systems, why people do the things they do, and what you could do to respond to those doings. Goodbye.